Well, hello there, and welcome to the Growing On podcast. My name is John Holcomb, and I am the host and producer of this show. And today I'm thankful for two things. One, I'm happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this episode. But two, I'm happy to be on the road in Morgan County today with Liam Tewksbury. Liam, start by telling me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your background, your farming background, who you are, different things like that people would be interested in knowing about you.
Well, my name is Liam Tewksbury, and I'm a third generation farmer from here in Morgan County. I wanted to come back to my hometown and kind of get back to my roots. We were a diversified agriculture background. We raised sheep and hay production, commercial cattle, and also we were in the vegetable production, so pretty agriculture based, and this is where I kind of got my start. My granddaddy built this farm back in the early 70s, and then my father, he farmed in Bostwick on the other side of the county in 1990. So we have a pretty long legacy back here in Madison, and I just kind of went through the ranks and just started farming and doing everything, and was involved in FFA. I started showing club lambs when I was about 8 years old, and did that all the way up until middle school, and then got into showing some dairy cattle. We're pretty big dairy county around here back in the day, and my love of cattle and farmers and stuff kind of came through showing livestock. And when I got into high school, I started showing beef cattle and joined FFA, and was very active in FFA with livestock judging and all the competitions in FFA, and that really kind of bolstered my love for agriculture, and going to state convention and national convention and seeing what you could do, as a young person in agriculture, and following my passion. This is something that I've always wanted to do. I made up my mind at a very young age, just kind of following in my granddaddy's and daddy's footsteps, and I got my first ever farm manager job when I was 18, just right down the road from here. I was probably a little too green for it, wet behind the ears per se, but an older gentleman in the community, family friend of ours, he took a chance on me, and that's kind of where my story began. And my love for production agriculture and the cattle industry just kind of strived from there, and from there I just kind of moved on to bigger and better things, and developed the skills and knowledge to be an advocate and somebody in this industry. And from there I've been very blessed to manage farms across the state, and work with producers across the state in the southeast. Now one of my probably coolest things that I've done was I was the manager at Rocking Chair Ranch Cattle in Forsyth, Georgia, with Mr. Joseph Egloff, and helped him build the Mid-South Packers that a lot of our cattle producers use here in the southeast, and that was a really cool deal, and learned a lot, and was able to come back to Madison for a little bit, and help a lot of producers in the registered business and commercial business, and that's kind of where the Rafter 7L kind of originated from. And currently I'm now up in the northeast northwest corner. I run a commercial operation in Habersham County, commercial cow operation with the state of Georgia, and that's my full-time job, as well as owner-operator Rafter 7L, kind of a consulting business that, and I've done everything from hard work to helping people, build farms. I've actually helped several People start farms from scratch. There's a man in Forsyth called Triple F Ranch. It was a little farm right there in Cumming that we helped build, and have a really close relationship with him. And so that's kind of what my passion is helping producers, and then finding those people that want to be in the industry and put them in the right direction. We also have a little deal with some friends of mine in Virginia called Select Genetics, Olivia Williams. I'm kind of her consultant for the southeastern parts, and we work pretty close together on some stuff, and we're just very very involved and very in depth in the cattle industry. And
No, awesome. That's great. So I'm going to kind of dissect a couple of the things that you said. The big one being advocacy. What is it about advocacy that you find important with the industry that you work in? For anyone that knows you, or at least maybe follows you on social media like I do, what is it about those efforts that are important to you and why you do those?
Well, I'd say it all comes back to, like I said, getting back into my roots. I growing up on a diversified agriculture background. We were in the public eye a lot. We just with a lot of things that we did, and just being in the community, and folks knew us as the farming family and everything, and being involved in FFA and seeing what difference you could make, and that really lit a fire in me. And it's just a passion that I've always had, and it's hard to put into words sometimes, the passion and the drive for the industry, just as agriculture, especially the cattle industry as a whole. It's just, you can't, there's not a more fulfilling life and passion that you can live, and when being just in Georgia agriculture, and being able to produce a wholesome product to put on someone's table, and being involved in the Georgia Cattlemen's Association and being involved in Georgia Farm Bureau has, once I left high school and got out of FFA, I found a kind of almost a family again, something to be part of, and it gives you a purpose, gives you a voice. I know Mr. Danny Bentley, he's one of my mentors that has kind of been with me for a long time. He's always said our strength is in numbers, and if I can be that voice and tell my story, and for somebody that may not be able to, or doesn't feel like their story could make a difference, I want to be that difference for somebody. And just being alongside producers and working on my own goals and everything, I don't think I would be here today without those organizations and the fellowship, and just the platform that they give. And I could talk to a brick wall per se. I'm known for my outgoingness, and I've always been that way. But I've never met a stranger, and Mama and Daddy could probably tell you that. But no, I just, it's something that's worthwhile. Like I said, it's a very fulfilling life, and it has so much purpose. And I have always strived. We talk about preservation and conservation and stuff. And I come from a very big family background on both sides of my family. My grandfather worked for NRCS for 30-40 years, and he raised cattle and was in the chicken house business, and I just saw the importance of you know, keeping what you have and telling the story. And I always told myself that if I ever got into position, because I was very blessed to have a very supportive family and the mentors that I had, that I wanted to give back to the next generation. And if I can be a face and a voice for the younger folks and be someone, I guess, quote unquote, to look up to and say, you know, if a small town boy from Madison, Georgia can do it, I believe anybody can, you know. And it don't take, you know, 1,000 acres and 1,000,000 head of cattle to do it. You just, it's in your blood, and you either got it, you know, and you'll know it, because you'll eat, sleep, and breathe it, and it's all you'll think about. And even on the bad days, you'll still want to wake up and do it. And I think that's my biggest drive, is that I've tried to go into other industries and I always wound up back in agriculture. And I finally just said, you know what, this is my calling to life. And I really believe that, you know, this is what I was put on the earth to do, is to you know, be an advocate for agriculture and see, you know, make the industry worthwhile.
Gotcha. So specifically on the cattle side of things, because you work primarily in the cattle industry, what is it about the industry that's important to you and that keeps that passion there, or maybe lights that fire in you?
Well, I guess my first answer would be to go back to my favorite scripture, Psalms 50 verse 10. You know, it talks about the cattle upon 1,000 hills. If the good Lord is willing to put cattle on the earth, and I think he had you know, cowboys have always kind of been my hero, but older I got, you know, and everyone needs, you know, I think the world needs a little bit more cowboys and everything, but to be a true cattleman, and, you know, there's so much more, and you know, if the good Lord, you know, I think he's probably the best cattleman of them all. And, you know, being a caretaker of the land and the preservation of the cattle industry, and there's just leaving it better than we found it, and just knowing that, you know, here in Georgia, you know, we've got close to 15,000 cattle producers with almost close to 1,000,000 head of cattle in the state. You know, that's something to work towards, and to keep it going. You know, I never want to get to a spot where we have to rely on, you know, other people or other countries to, you know, because we can do it just fine here. And I think we do a really good job with the way that we raise our cattle here in Georgia. And there's just something about knowing that, you know, the dirt under my nails and the calluses on my hands, and you know, the connections that I make and the people that I meet, you know, they have meaning, you know, and put a smile on someone's face when, you know, they said, you know, we enjoyed a nice steak dinner, or, you know, an afternoon burger that was grown here in Georgia. That really kind of motivates you to really kind of keep going, and because it's tough, you know. I know that I personally, I have been involved in the industry, but there's producers out there that have been at it longer than I have, and they got a lot more skin in the game than I do, and I have the utmost admiration, you know, for those producers that get up every single day and I want to be able to fight for them and fight for their story and their legacy, and for their next generation to be able to to carry that and you know keep Georgia's agriculture in #1 commodity, and just to put to go back and just put that wholesome product, at the end of the day, that we've done the best we can with what we got to feed our communities. We're not out we're not out here to feed the world, but we're here. It starts with feeding the communities in your area, and if you can start there, I think that's a big thing.
Awesome. So the last question I have for you kind of piggybacks on that just a smidge. So you're going to be 28 soon, right? You're very young in the game. You're part of the younger generation, at least, as I'm sure you're well aware. But farming, specifically raising cattle, is not an easy industry to get into. And so with that being said, for someone that is wanting to continue the legacy of raising cattle, or maybe they're wanting to get into the game of trying to raise cattle and start a herd, what are some of the challenges that they'll face?
I would say probably, I know for me personally, is just sometimes that you don't feel adequate enough. You trying to trying to fill shoes that come before you, and working with family can't always be the easiest thing to juggle, but I can say is you just got to put your best foot forward, and I don't think I would be here without the mentors that I had. Now I'm not going to say that I've done everything right, and it's taken 10 years for me, and I still haven't gotten things right, but you just got to try. And I wouldn't, I'd say the most expensive words, and it's kind of a cliche saying, but the most expensive words that someone could say is, we've always done it this way. And as a young person trying to put those ideas to paper, and getting someone to believe in you is probably a big thing that I would say a lot of the younger generation. And then just the cost, everything, as everybody knows, is just so expensive. But you got to think outside the box a little bit, and find that community, find those mentors, because they're out there. They truly are. And I honestly, I truly believe that the older generation wants to see us succeed. It may not feel like that sometimes, but I don't think they would work this hard not for us to have something. So just be willing to just work hard, and think outside the box and get involved. I would say that's been the biggest thing, and having that almost foundation to rely on, like Georgia Cattlemen's and Farm Bureau, having those connections to be able to know that you're not alone. And I think I would say that, a lot of young people in the game, they probably feel like, man, I'm the only one dealing with this. But then you go to a cattleman's convention or a Farm Bureau conference, and you talk to your neighbor, and you're like, man, he's dealing with the same things, and help each other out, and just you just got to believe in yourself. And they say the harder you work, the luckier you get, and I would say I've gotten pretty lucky for the past 10 years, but I think the next couple years, I mean, they're probably going to be pretty tough, from just looking at the environment that we're probably looking in agriculture, but we'll get through it. I think the farmers and ranchers are very industrious people, and where you got to just have that little bit of a grit and tough skin. But like they say, if it was easy, everyone would do it, So to be part of that 1% of the population that they say, it's something to be, proud of, and I think the younger generation, from my experience, and I might be a little bit biased, but I think we've got some pretty inspiring young producers in the air, and I think we've got some pretty inspiring even younger kids in the industry. I've been very fortunate to be hands-on with a lot of the youth, being on the YCC board, and being as a young farmers and ranchers with Farm Bureau, and just seeing the same passion and love for the industry that I have. It kind of lights a fire in you to make sure that you're doing everything that you can for your industry, seeing other folks' love and passion for it, and the advocacy, and telling their story, and like I said, they're just, and social media has been a wonderful outlet for me, because I get to not only share my story with my friends, but just the daily consumer, folks that may not have that connection with cattle or the farm life. I get to, that might be the thing that they look forward to is, what is Liam up to today on the farm, and I can reach so many more people, and that just helps us because we're all in the same game. And I think if we did a better job of telling our story, because the consumer is so far removed from what we do as cattle, and there's so much misinformation out there, and I think if we can capture that through our stories, through social media, I really think we could help our industry as a whole, and teaching those consumers, because at the end of the day, we're in the people business as much as we're in the cattle business. And I think if we can work as hard as on the people as we do our cattle and our farms, I think as an industry as a whole, we can get more people in it, we can get more people involved, and people would be a lot more understanding to kind of keep these farms around, And I'm afraid one day that folks are going to wake up and asphalt and concrete don't raise cattle. And I think if we can be a big advocate for that and keep Georgia thriving like they are, I think we can keep the industry whole. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think we've got a lot of big players in the game that want to, and if it's the last thing I do, I'll make sure to keep it going the best I can.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it from here in Morgan County. Liam, I want to thank you again for the time and inviting me out. And for all of you that are listening, if you haven't done so already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the Growing On podcast. That will be much appreciated. As always, thanks for listening, and be on the lookout in the coming weeks for new content to drop. Take care, everybody.